And it's my pleasure today to introduce our presenter, Brian Hannon. Brian's a familiar face to most of you as VP of Sales here at LeveragePoint, and he heads up our value selling initiatives by showing our customers how to create, capture, and communicate value in every customer interaction. So with that, Brian, welcome.
Great, thanks, Nick. And hopefully you can hear me. I'm sure you'll tell me if you can't.
I can hear you.
All right. Great. So yeah, we're going to spend a little bit of time this morning or this afternoon, wherever you are, talking about value and some specific areas that we look at as LeveragePoint, and we try to help our customers look at in terms of really what value means to your sales organization and how you can start to think about the specific impacts that it does have in order to really drive a value selling initiative. So we start with, what is a value conversation? And I think of a value conversation as a discrete step in the sales process. It can be certainly spread out in multiple steps, but the simplest way for me to think about it is as a step in every significant sales process. The elements that you see on the bottom of the slide here that are important to a good value conversation. Number one, it really should be a story. And we emphasize the story part because we feel that salespeople over the years have been handed spreadsheets many times and expected to go and try to communicate through an Excel spreadsheet. It just doesn't work. And it's happened, many, many times over the years and proven to be unsuccessful. So creating a story that your salespeople can walk through and communicate is important, and salespeople like stories. Number two, it's quantified. And we think it's important and critical to quantify the value that you are providing or potentially providing your customer and incorporate that throughout the story. So again, going back to the spreadsheet example, you don't want to just throw out a bunch of numbers. You want to be able to tell a story in chapters, if you will, that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it interweaves the numbers throughout, so that the average person can see and incorporate the information that they're getting, just as they would if they were getting a typical PowerPoint product presentation that a salesperson might give. Number three, it should be flexible. And what we mean by that is in many cases, you're starting with a set of data that might come from your estimates. It might come from a set of average data from your customer base, because you don't necessarily know the specifics of the prospect that you're speaking with, but you want to know. And that's one of the goals of the conversation. So if you have a flexible, digital, interactive, however you want to call it, value story, which LeveragePoint provides, it allows you to tell them a story with the baseline set of data, but make changes to that based on their feedback. And it actually prompts them to, as they see the information presented, to correct some of the data to make it better reflect their particular situation. Because human nature, people want to understand, oh, this is interesting. You helped another customer in this way. How would that impact me? And they will begin to participate in most cases in that conversation. And then finally, by the end of the value story, it should have a clear demonstration that choosing your offering is an easy decision and it's the best decision versus doing nothing or versus going with a direct competitor. And so the goal of the value story is to make their decision as simple as possible. It has other goals, and we'll talk about those, but that at the end of the day, I think is the main goal. You're communicating value to someone to help them make a decision quickly and confidently that they should go in a certain direction. So we've talked about this sales velocity equation before, and we do refer back to it. In this webinar, we go a little bit deeper. So you see 4 levers here, and we're going to talk about each of these in more detail. But as a reminder, the goal of a value conversation and the goal of having them done on a regular basis on every significant deal that you have is to increase the sales velocity of your organization or to increase the sales velocity of an individual salesperson. It does both. So you're not only helping yourself, you're helping your organization or your company. We'll talk more about what this means. So let's get a little bit deeper into value conversations. This is a new chart that we put together. This is really a culmination of years of having conversations with our customers, hearing about the benefits that they receive from having a value conversation during the sales cycle, and kind of how those various benefits group into categories and impact the 4 levers that we just saw on the previous slide. So we're going to go into each one of these in a little bit more detail. This is very useful, by the way, for people in the organization who may not be in sales. So maybe you're in sales enablement, sales operations, maybe you're in engineering or product management or product development. And you know that the idea and the concept of value is very important even in your role, but you also know that salespeople being more proficient at communicating that value ultimately will help sell more product, will help make customers happier, and will help maintain customer relationships. These are some of the benefits that your salespeople will see, and the more familiar you are with them, I think the better champion you can be internally for value. So let's get into them here a little bit. So the first one here is around confidence, whether it's the buyer confidence or the seller's confidence, but it's really confidence that you're making the right decision. So if we think about buyer confidence, and this is a quote that talks about margin erosion and really talks about discounting pressure, but this is one of the elements that I'm going to talk about here. The first element is really buyer confidence. When a buyer sees a business proposal or a value story, and sometimes we use those interchangeably, that is strong and clear, they're much more willing to make a larger purchase, to make a bigger commitment to the seller than they would if there was risk there, if they were not as convinced. Maybe they're kind of on the fence. People on the fence tend to try to reduce their risk as much as possible, and they dip their toe in the water. What a strong, clear value story gives is someone that gives them the confidence to go back to their organization and say, you know what, this is the right thing to do, and let's not do it in pieces. Let's do it in a much bigger scale. That ultimately results in larger deals. What this also does is helps in negotiation. So there's different negotiation steps within the sales cycle. Everyone knows that. In fact, salespeople know you're really negotiating from point one. You're negotiating access to the buyer. You're negotiating access to their management, which we'll talk about more later. But you're also negotiating what the deal looks like. And having a strong value story provides confidence to your champion that this is the right proposal. So it gives them confidence to move it forward to the people they need to talk to ultimately make something happen. What it also does is it provides the salesperson confidence when they're getting down to the end. So most salespeople know at some point you get handed to a procurement person. It's almost probably 99% of the time. And that procurement person has a job to do, and we respect the job that they do where they're trying to get a discount for their company. And so when you go into a conversation with a procurement person with a very clear and strong business proposal, not only are you able to communicate that to them because you've actually prepared that with their colleagues earlier in the sales cycles. This isn't something you just came up with. This is something that has real data that you've agreed upon with colleagues of theirs that you're now introducing to them. Sometimes it's the first time they're seeing it. Sometimes they've seen it and maybe they don't want to talk about it a lot because it doesn't help their negotiating position. But it's a great way for a salesperson to come into a conversation being able to point to something that says, this is a good decision for you to make, Mrs. Procurement Person, and this is why. And when the automatic request, which it almost always comes, hey, we usually get a discount here, your competitors are less expensive, they're giving us a discount in their proposals. When a salesperson doesn't have something to point to, they tend to cave in to those 10% discounts. Okay, I'll give it to you. Especially when the salesperson has that leeway themselves. They're almost always ready to say, if we can get this thing done, I'll give you that 5 or 10%. When they're very confident in what they're providing, what you find is salespeople will stick much closer to list price than they otherwise would have. And so what you find as a trend overall is you're closing deals closer to list price, which is much more profitable for the organization. So this is what we see from our customers. They end up closing larger deals. We hear all the time, salespeople coming back saying, I closed it at list price. I hadn't done that before. And then when we have our partners within our customer base tracking the deals over time, they're finding that on average, they're closing these at higher prices, which really ends up going to the profitability overall of the organization. So if we go into the second area, we're talking now about qualification. And we use a term that actually we took from one of our customers. It's called customer intimacy. And customer intimacy can probably mean a lot of different things. What it means to me is the ability for a salesperson to have a conversation with a customer that provides them value, that they actually enjoy, and they value the length of the conversation. They want to hear more from the salesperson versus the obligatory, I'll give you 15 minutes and then I have another meeting to go to. When you get the 15 minutes, I have another meeting to go to, ultimately that deal is maybe qualified, maybe it's not, you just don't know. So as a salesperson, being the positive person that you are, you're going to probably defer to, yeah, it's qualified. I asked them my qualification questions. They gave me one-word answers and they were all what I was looking for. So this deal is qualified and we're going to put it into the funnel. That's a problem. And we'll talk about why that is a problem. If you talk to many sales leaders, and many people have been in these funnel reviews where you're going through this big funnel, you might have 100 salespeople and they have all of these opportunities. Sales leaders know from history that the great majority, 60%, even higher sometimes, of those deals are never going to close, but they don't know which ones they are. They knew their lives would be much easier. So they have all of these deals. They know greater than half of them won't close. They just can't figure out how to get the salespeople to better qualify the ones that ultimately will sit in that funnel for months and months and then never close. Value helps that. Customer intimacy helps that. When you spend more time early in the sales cycle with a customer, having conversations and providing value, you're going to come out of those conversations knowing, is this deal qualified or not? And what you do is you build that trust in that relationship so that the prospect ends up providing more information about what they're really thinking and what's really happening. And ultimately, what you find out is, even though they're very happy and maybe a conversation goes really well, you walk out saying, yeah, they're not ready yet. This is going to take another year. This is next year's opportunity. And so you don't end up forecasting that. What happens there is, if we think about the 60% of the deals that never close, that's 60% of your effort that's ultimately wasted. If you can reduce that and place those resources on deals that have a much higher chance of closing, that are better qualified, everything goes better, right? You put more effort into the ones that will end up providing more value and end up ultimately providing the revenue that you're looking for, versus dumping the resources down the drain on the ones that ultimately never go anywhere. So the resource allocation is critical. If you think about how much of the revenue a company spends on marketing and sales, on their sales organization, it's a significant number. And so that number, if better allocated, can do amazing things in other places. So the goal here is really to use value early in the sales cycle, use it to not only establish yourself as a unique salesperson, differentiate yourself, but also provide that customer intimacy so that the deals that ultimately you end up forecasting have a much higher chance of closing. The third area is win rates. This is the fun one for salespeople. Most salespeople are very competitive. And the win rates can kind of be split into two categories, right? You have the deals that you win by competing, but in fact, the bigger issue is the deals that never go anywhere, that result in no decisions. And this gets back to what I just mentioned before, but now we're towards the end of the sales cycle. So in the beginning of the sales cycle, when they're not qualified well, they just get sent into the funnel and they kind of work their way through. But at the end of the sales cycle, when they've been forecasted and they just don't close, that is an issue that really frustrates sales organizations. So when you have deals that don't close, it's because the customer isn't clear about why they should make a decision. So they delay. They're trying to reduce their risk as much as possible. I don't blame them. If something is not clear and there's a big price tag to it, you don't want to be the person in your organization that takes a bet on something that fails later on, because then you've spent a lot of your employer's money. And they look at that and go, didn't we vet this out better? Didn't we analyze this more? So the higher the risk, the less chance they're going to make a decision. The better the business proposal, the lower the risk. And so clarifying what you can do, whether it's you have a cheaper competitor and you're trying to establish that your proposal, while it might be more expensive, is a much better decision over the long haul, over 5 years, over 6 years, 10 years. Providing that clear business proposal to your champion to then move forward is important to reducing both the no decisions, as well as sometimes you're competing head to head. And in many cases, when you can put a business proposal that actually addresses your main competitor, compares the relevant value with going with you versus going with the competitor, and you're able to collaborate with your champion on that, you're going to win the business much more often than you would have if you didn't do that. If you leave that up to your champion, then they're going to make decisions and they're going to emphasize things that may not be correct. They also might not reflect well on you or your offering. So being involved in this proposal and having the proposal really help both your champion as well as the executives make the decision they're going to make anyway, but anticipate that, help them compare side by side, and give them that information to, again, make the decision simple. So again, we see this a lot when our customers start to track the opportunities that use a value conversation with LeveragePoint versus the ones that are more traditional, that might not get into a value conversation. They see an increase in win rates consistently. And 10% might not sound like a lot, but over the course of a year and across many salespeople and many opportunities, 10% is a significant amount of revenue. And then finally, reduction in sales cycle time. And I think what you'll find is these levers sort of all impact each other as well. And all three of these first three levers really impacts the fourth, which is you have this long, complex sales cycle. And the simpler you make the proposal, whether the proposal is early on with some rough estimates, or whether it's later on with very specific numbers, the simpler and more clear you make the decision for the customer, the faster things happen. So in terms of sales cycles, what we find is, you're dealing with lots of different decision makers. So equipping your champion with the ability to sell to those decision makers for you, because sometimes you can't get access to all of them, and reduce the risk in the process makes the whole process simpler. In addition, eventually you need to get to the decision makers, and a salesperson who speaks the language of the executive and starts to speak that language early in the sales cycle is the salesperson who's going to get introduced to those decision makers first and much more quickly in general. And then finally, every significant purchase that happens in an organization has a business case that accompanies it. Some are better than others. Rarely does a company buy something, very rarely, buy something without a business case attached to it. And I think one thing that lots of salespeople forget is that when they're dealing with someone within an organization they're selling to, maybe not procurement necessarily yet, but you're dealing with someone in operations or someone who's trying to improve the business, they may do this once or twice a year. This might not be their main job. They're running operations in a factory. They're trying to improve operations within a certain workforce. And they may make a significant purchase once a year. So they're not familiar with how to create an effective business case. Well, a good value story is the beginnings of an effective business case. And once it's collaborated on with your champion, it turns into that business case that they can then take forward. That business case will not only get you the meeting with the decision maker, but that business case ultimately will help you with procurement when you're closing the deal. So it's important in the beginning, and it's important all the way through the sales cycle. So again, we see these impacts all the time. In fact, the biggest story I tend to hear is, hey, we were stuck. This thing had been sitting on the desk of a CFO for months. We couldn't get him to sign it. So we got back in. We were able to make a value pitch, a value conversation, and then suddenly the next day they signed it. It's that kind of clarity that makes people move and make decisions. And a good value story helps with that clarity. So those are the 4 areas that we wanted to touch on and give you some examples of, what are the events that occur after a strong value conversation. And I think we went over, I kind of jumbled a few in there, but we went over about 12 different events from 4 of the levers. And there's probably others that maybe we're not articulating yet, but we can only fit so many on a slide. So if we think now about an organization that says, yeah, this makes sense, we agree. We have a large sales organization. We have varying sets of capability. We have some young salespeople, some older experienced salespeople. What do? We try to simplify the process. It's never simple, but it's important and it's valuable to your organization to make that transition. And so one way we kind of look at the history of sales, and again, this is a very simple approach. A long time ago, it was relationship selling. People sold to who they knew. That over time in B2B sales moved to sort of the feature benefit selling. So salespeople were educated on, here's what our offering does, and here's what the competitor's offering does. Here's all our cool technology, and our cool technology is better than their cool technology. And so for many years, and I got caught up in this myself, salespeople just focused on talking about their product. They'd start talking about their company a little bit, then they'd move in and spend minutes and hours talking about how great their product was. And it's amazing. Customers are so used to this. I think they turn their brains off after a while. They know this 1-hour product pitch is coming. The next generation of successful salespeople, and by the way, there's a slice of those successful salespeople today, are the ones who focus on the business impact of the offering, not on the bells and whistles. Those are important. They are important at certain times, but they're not getting your buyer excited anymore. And what will get them excited, if you're talking at the right level, is how you can improve their business, how you can help reduce their costs and help them generate more revenue, and really kind of retool what they're doing today to improve the whole efficiency. And that's really what value-based selling gets into. So this is really the next generation. And we talk about, today in a typical organization that is not doing it, your best salespeople are probably innate value sellers. They do it, they've been doing it since day one. It's kind of how their brain works. What we try to do is help you make that transition from just having it be the top 5 to 10% to get it to be 50, 60, 70% of your salespeople. And you'll see the impact if you're able to do that. So when we first engage with customers, we call this our phase one. What you're trying to do here is set up a situation that on a smaller scale, you can demonstrate that if we do something different, if we focus on value rather than focus on product, that's going to have an impact. And if we can demonstrate on a smaller scale it has an impact, then it's going to have an impact on a larger scale. So step one is let's create a experiment, if you will, that helps the larger organizations see this is a powerful thing to do. So when we engage with a customer initially, we help with the content creation. We help them create a value proposition or a value story in the LeveragePoint platform. It's digital, it's interactive, that is focused on one of their offerings. We usually look for a highly differentiated offering or an offering that's critical to their business. So something that when they look out next year, they know they have to do really well in this area if they're going to hit those revenue objectives. Once we focus on an offering or two or three even, and we create the content, we identify people within the organization to help us with this effort. So number one, you need your sales leader engaged. You need a person who is over the salespeople you'll be working with to be able to demonstrate this is important and to give them some guidance that they're going to focus on this and actually make the effort to change over the course of, say, 6 to 9 months or 6 to 12 months. Step two is what we call a mobilizer. This is the person who will go with the salespeople initially to have these conversations. The one thing I say all the time is that salespeople innately know this is a good thing to do, but there's a fear in many salespeople about doing it the first few times. They are nervous about looking uninformed in front of their customers, looking bad. And they feel like if they have a conversation with their customers where they don't know the answers or they're not clear and the conversation takes a weird left turn, they might lose a deal. So lots of those salespeople will avoid doing this because they're afraid they're going to lose the deal. What a mobilizer does is it takes that and takes that fear away initially. So the salesperson can rely on a mobilizer the first couple of times to go with them, to answer questions with them so that they're not alone. They're not left sort of on an island trying to answer questions that they may not have answered before. So the mobilizer is a coach. It's someone who salespeople are comfortable bringing to customers who may have presented before. It could be someone in the sales organization or someone in the product organization who is customer friendly. And then finally, you need execution. You need a number of reps. So we look for, we use 50 conversations. It can be lower, it can be higher, but you need a set number of these conversations to get the feedback and get the data from the organization or from the group that's doing this that says, okay, yeah, we did this. We had 30 conversations over the past 6 months and it went great. We got all sorts of feedback. They'd never heard this before. They wanted us to come back in and do it again for management. They told us that this was much more effective than our competitors. It increased our customer intimacy. We spent more time with them than they had spent with other vendors. So obviously we put ourselves in a better position. All of those anecdotes, by the way, that we just talked about are what you'll get out of this initial phase one. And collecting those is important. Closed deals is important. Sometimes it takes a while to get those. So you want to be able to gather as much of the relevant data quickly and immediately as you start to have those conversations. And that's why we put together that chart of the 4 areas and all of the impacts of those conversations. So we're happy that you folks can use those and sort of track your salespeople. You know, did you see this? Did you see this? Did you see this? And they will, and you'll find out that they give you that feedback if you ask. So a successful phase one turns into hopefully a successful phase two. And this is where now you're going beyond a smaller group of salespeople with a limited set of offerings to looking at developing value stories and content for a larger group of offerings. So this is where the platform effect is important, where now you have a number of value stories salespeople can log in and access, and LeveragePoint supports that. So now they're sharing their knowledge. They're also sharing their data. So as they collect data from customers, that data is saved in the platform as well. So you can see across a number of different opportunities, the various sets of data that you're getting directly from the customers. How much are they paying for energy? How much are they wasting on time spent doing certain things? That data can be very useful for your product management folks as well. Engaging executive leadership, this is really just an expansion of engaging a sales leader. So you want, if you're looking now at your entire sales organization, embedding this, you want value to become more part of your culture. And leadership has to understand why it's important. Typically they do. In fact, they're almost always the ones who are pushing it. And it's important to kind of get everyone on the same page. The Value Office is an extension of the mobilizer, and it's something that we see in the most successful companies, B2B companies in the world. Lots of these companies invest in, they call it different things. We call it a value office. This is a group of people who focus on value. And the benefit of a successful value implementation, whether it's in product management, product development, or it's in sales, is tremendous. So the investment in a group of people to make sure it happens correctly is a simple decision once you look at the numbers. And a value office on the sales side is a group that supports salespeople, supports the content development, and supports them in the field to have those conversations and kind of backs them up there. So a value office becomes more important and in a very profitable group. And actually you can become a hero within your organization by beginning a value office. You tend to stand out very quickly. And then finally, we look at sales execution. So now you're looking at, okay, if we've done this on a small scale and it has worked, let's extend this and do it on a larger scale. This requires CRM integration. So now you're looking at embedding value stories into the sales process. So now when you look at your sales process, you're doing a funnel review, have you qualified the account? Have you had a value conversation? That is a discrete step within your sales process, and it should become that. And then finally, tracking success stories. It's really important from the beginning to the end, but it becomes even more important when there's this much more investment happening. You're investing in this new group of people in a value office, and you're investing a lot into your salespeople in training them how to have these conversations. So success stories, which by the way happen very quickly and they happen on a very large scale. So it's the funner part of the more enjoyable part of our job. But it's important to track those and track those over time, see how they change, and use that to justify kind of the whole program. So I haven't looked at the time. Hopefully you guys are still around. In terms of conclusions, I'm not going to repeat myself too much here, but value is important. As I just mentioned, value conversations in the sales cycle are important, and making them a standard step, I think, is critical. Integrating value into your existing systems, specifically a CRM system, is important, and we recommend companies do that. And then promoting and advertising success, capturing it, promoting and advertising success is also a critical step. So I am going to show you a quick demo just to wrap this up. So don't go away yet. And this is LeveragePoint. So hopefully you guys can see my screen still. I'm assuming you can. So this is our sales velocity value story. So when we talk to our customers or prospects, they say, hey, you guys talk a lot about value. What's your value story? So this is our value story, or one of them. and I created a fictitious company called Acme Manufacturing. I'm going to keep this very simple, but just sort of to extend the conversation of what we've been having around sales velocity. And these are the levers that we've talked about several times here. I won't repeat those. What we look at, though, is how do we think about the financial impact that improving your sales velocity can have on an organization. So if we have a company called Acme Manufacturing, maybe they make some type of a heating and cooling system, you know, for maybe large office buildings. And they have 100 salespeople within their organization. Maybe their average deal size is $500,000. And maybe those salespeople today are closing roughly 10 of those per year. Now, these are rough numbers, and they're intended to be. This is not an engineering project here. This is a rough idea of what would it mean to improve your sales velocity? What would that mean to your revenue? So if we look at the slice of revenue from this particular offering, we're looking at $500 million. Now, if we look at the sales velocity equation, right, and we look at adjusting those numbers, we've set that up so that we can do that here. So if we go back to each of the levers, and let's be simplistic. Let's say we're going to increase the number of our qualified opportunities by 5% by communicating value early, and our average deal value will increase by 10%. So those automatic 10% discounts will start to go away. Our win rate, say, will go up by 5%. So we'll reduce our no decisions in the funnel, and we'll start beating those low-cost competitors more often. And then our length of our sales cycle will reduce, small as well. Let's say 5%. That's maybe, a month per year, roughly. So when you take all four of these into account, now we have a potential impact of 28%. So if we look at that $500 million revenue here, a 28% impact over the course of a year would increase that to $639 million, which I think most people listening on here would take that. So $139 million improvement over the course of a year would be a huge win. And that is the type of conversation that we're trying to get our prospects to have internally. This is why we want to invest in making this change. I always try to look at what this might look like over 3 years, and we realize adoption is not something that happens overnight. So if we scale this back to, say, a 20% adoption in year 1, 40% in year 2, and say it gets up to 60% in year 3. We're looking at $166 million over the course of 3 years by changing the behavior of your organization, implementing some new technology to do that, and really thinking about value as a cultural change, not just a one-time thing that you do on big deals, but something that's done in product development and in sales and marketing that ultimately will drive your revenue and help you compete much more effectively. So we can save this as a value story for Acme. We can download it, which I won't do right now, to a PDF or PowerPoint and send this back to the Acme Manufacturing folks. But I think you get the gist. So I think with that, I was going to pass this back to Nick.
Yeah, I'll take it over. Thank you, Brian, for that great presentation. So got a couple questions that popped up during the presentation, but if you haven't submitted yours, if you have any, there's still time. Popular one always, is the webinar recorded? Yes, we're recording it. Yes, you'll get it. You'll get it in 1 to 2 business days, depending on how long the recording takes. But you should expect that in your inbox by Monday at the latest. So Brian, first question I see. Let's do this. do you ever see teams engage in value conversations? And I'm using the scare quotes, what they call value conversations, but they're missing a key element of what you would consider a value conversation. Where are these gaps usually?
Yeah, I guess a couple ways I would answer that. Number one, when sometimes we talk to customers and they say, yeah, we talk value all the time. When we ask them to be specific, it gets kind of fuzzy. And so what we find is the quantification step, or Nick calls it dollarizing, which is fine as well. That step is a step that should be done prior. And sometimes people skip that because sometimes they don't know how to do it necessarily. They haven't done it in the past. By the way, we help you do that. We help our customers understand the methodology and the process to do that. So quantification is important. And if that's not part of the value conversation, you're missing a major part of it. I think the other part is the way that conversation goes. So if you present a spreadsheet with an ROI number to someone, say, yep, I had a value conversation, they might look at the spreadsheet and go, yeah, that's great. Look at the ROI number and say, yeah, that makes sense. And they walk away, but it doesn't stick. So the other issue there is without engagement, you're not really having a value conversation. You're just giving them a, hey, what's an ROI number you need to make a decision? Well, no one really takes that and does much with it. So building a story that they're part of, that they participate in, is really critical to having or viewing something as a successful value conversation.
Makes sense. So I got one on procurement. So procurement groups at one of our larger customers won't agree to have a value discussion. What do you recommend in this situation?
Yeah, so we get that a lot, and some of the larger, more mature procurement organizations are wary of having value conversations because it puts them in a more difficult position. They lose their advantage, which no one wants to lose their advantage, so it makes sense. Number one, we recommend that you don't introduce value at the end of a sales cycle. It's too late. And if you do, you'll probably get shot down more often than not. If you try to engage in that for the first time with the procurement person, they're going to smile and say, oh, that's cute. But no, we're not going to talk about that right now. What we do recommend is having that conversation earlier in the sales cycle with people in the organization, not procurement, but people who are trying to make changes and trying to make improvements, reduce costs and increase revenue, and are much more willing to engage in that back and forth. And then once you have that information and you've developed that joint proposal, that's when you introduce that to procurement. It's much harder for them to push that off if they know their colleagues have kind of endorsed it. They can't just ignore it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And we always talk about introducing value throughout the sales process, as you mentioned. So value conversations with existing customers. So, we talked a lot about, new business in this presentation, but let's just say you have an upcoming renewal or a big account that you're looking to keep or grow. How would you apply value there?
Yeah, so our recommendation, and I think what we hear from customers that is most successful, is that value should not only be used when you're trying to get new business. Value should be used to confirm that the business that you have is going well, but is strong. The people that you've sold to in the past, they want to hear that they made a good decision. And you coming in and reinforcing to them that, 6 months ago you did this and you made a great decision. Look at all the good stuff you're getting. That is a great conversation to have. And they want to have those conversations. It makes them feel better. But it does something else at the same time. It solidifies your relationship with them. We all know, and we've all, as salespeople, we've all had that time where we wake up one morning, we go, oh, wait a minute. Is my customer talking to my competitor? Maybe they've been talking to them for months. and I don't know about it. What have they been doing? I've just assumed things are going well, and I'm not prepared for this. Well, when you have regular, and these can be annual, these can be quarterly, value conversations with your customer, you're preparing them for when a competitor calls up and says, hey, I can do better, or I'm cheaper. They already have information at their fingertips that says, yeah, I know you're cheaper, but here's why you're really not cheaper. Or, hey, tell me how you would do this, or tell me how you would do that. And in many cases, especially the cheaper competitors, they're not prepared to have any of these value conversations. So those competitive threats become very short-lived. And so having that regular value conversation just to ensure that you keep a customer, or even if it's, you know, the contract is up in 6 months to a year, you don't wait till the end. You have that value check-in early and on a regular basis, and it will help you sleep better at night.
Yes, it will. So we got a product-specific question about the PowerPoint/PDF download feature. So just in general, when you download a PDF or a PowerPoint file, what is the editability? Can changes be made inside or outside LeveragePoint?
Can you say that again? Because
So I think the question is, when you download a PowerPoint presentation and export it from LeveragePoint, you know, is it something that can be edited outside the tool? And we also have the PDF version as well.
Right. So when you create a value story in LeveragePoint, it's completely, well, the data is editable. Some parts of it are editable as well, and we work with you to figure out which ones you want to make editable. So we try to make those as flexible as possible. When you click on export PDF, it's really taking screenshots, so that's not editable. You now have a PDF that's kind of static. When you press export PowerPoint, now you're creating PowerPoint slides, but they're screenshots still. So the slides can be moved around pretty easily, but the editability is limited within the slide itself. So what we recommend is make the edits within LeveragePoint, press export, and you're good. We can give access in certain situations to your customers as well. So talk to us about that. If you want to allow your customer to have access to a value story that you've worked with them on, we can set that up, and they can make edits that they need to make when they're, you know, moving that to show to their management.
Great. And yeah, you can imagine the different use cases for each, you know, collaboration versus submitting a business case to executives, for example. So one on buying committees. So, you know, mentions that more often these days, buying committees are used in lieu of, you know, just running it up the ladder to decision makers. So have you seen value stories and these sorts of value propositions used in the context of buying committees?
Yeah, so people familiar with this process sometimes use the term, you know, persona. So a buying committee is ultimately a group of people who are going to have their own opinions. Usually, if you're been in sales long enough, you know that there's a couple of people within that committee who's ultimately the real decision makers, where the others are the influencers. So setting up a value story that can address different types of personas is possible within LeveragePoint and is recommended. So at the end of the day, the data is going to be the same, but the story might be different. For example, you might have 4 or 5 different value drivers that you provide a particular organization. 2 or 3 of those are important for someone in the organization. There's a couple that are important for others, and based on their role, you know, maybe they're in operations and engineering, or maybe they're in sales and marketing, they're going to be impacted more heavily, less heavily by different value drivers. You can set up the stories so that you have multiple different stories based on the role of the person that you're speaking with. So addressing their different needs in a different telling of the value story can be one way to address committees like that.
Great, yeah, and I think, you know, LeveragePoint's capability of toggling on and off different elements of the value story for each persona is really powerful in that situation. So I've got 2 more, Brian. We can do them in reverse order. So this one is about the value office. So when you've seen a successful value office or say value committee, I guess we can use this interchangeably. Where in the organization are we pulling these people from? What departments can and should be represented?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think you'll get different answers depending on who you speak with, and maybe even within different verticals that you speak with. Value is important throughout the product development cycle, and value is important in commercialization and in the commercial part of your organization in sales and marketing. And so where a value office fits sometimes is based on which executive in the organization is pushing the value initiative. And getting on board of a value initiative, as I mentioned, I think a moment earlier in the presentation, is really a way to elevate yourself within your company, right? It's going to, ultimately, you're going to be able to point to tons of revenue that you've helped impact. Now, you could be a senior product management leader who says, we need to understand value in order to build our products, but we also need to understand value if we're going to have successful product launches. So we're going to create a value office that reports up through us, but then impacts how those product launches go. That's one example. A more obvious example is a senior marketing or sales and marketing leader who says, well, we have field engineers today who do some of this value work for the salespeople. We're going to actually create a group under sales and marketing that focuses on value, and they're going to be the ones helping people in the field. That's another example of where a value office could sit. There are probably other areas, but I think those are the main two that I've seen.
Makes sense. So this last one, I think, is a really good one to close on. So we already do value selling. What's next? What are the latest trends that you see around the corner? And I'm guessing, talking with, our customers and prospects and other experts in the area.
Yeah, so we focus on value. So most of what we talk about with our customers or hear from them is around how value is applied in different areas. Outcome-based contracts and outcome-based selling is an area that I think outcome-based contracts have been around for many years, but being able to support those and rely on those because it does impact your business. We are starting to hear more and more about the use of value. And again, we touched on this a couple of times, but the use of value as a customer success tool is becoming more and more important and critical. So using value as a way to solidify your relationships, to grow your business within accounts, and to fend off competitors is really a lot of what customer success does today. And more companies are building customer success organizations. I think it's traditionally been kind of software companies like ours where customer success was really created from the ground up. But a lot of traditional companies, industrial type companies, are using customer success because they're transitioning in some ways towards the model of annual contracts, even outcomes-based contracts. And then just to add to that, the Internet of Things really fits into this whole area as well. So you have companies like large, industrial companies who, and I'll use my Acme manufacturing example, where they would sell a huge piece of expensive equipment to an organization. Today, they're leasing that equipment on an annual basis, or they're really just providing an annual contract for the equipment and the service and whatever materials are needed and support. And they wrap all that up and they give you an annual contract. Well, that means they could lose that contract next year. So the IoT has opened up this opportunity for value to be used as a way to maintain those customer relationships. And really, value is also used as a way to transition companies from buying the way they've always bought, which is we need to spend $2 million on this big thing, to, oh, well, we only need to spend $300,000, but that covers next year. And we have to understand now that we don't own it anymore. They own it and they're going to service it. We're just going to get the benefit from it. being able to transition customers from making the mental shift from how they bought previously to how they should buy today and why that's a benefit to them is really critical for a lot of these organizations.
Great. Now, awesome. So thank you, Brian, for that great presentation. Oh, missed a slide. So before you go, just a quick reminder to pre-register for next month's webinar during the exit survey. We're going to be joined by Bob Apollo, and he's going to be exploring ways to make a rational and emotional case for really disrupting the status quo through value selling, so and outcome-based selling. So this is a really popular topic, so we're really excited for this one. So make sure you pre-register in the exit survey and sign up for that, and we'll take care of it for you. So that will be it for us today. Thank you all for taking the time to join us, and a special thank you for Brian for all your insights. From all of us here at LeveragePoint, have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care.
Thank you.